Welcome to the Revenue Rewired podcast, hosted by StringCan Interactive's visionary CEO Jay Feitlinger and no-nonsense COO Sarah Shepard. We're here to accelerate your revenue and give your marketing purpose. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this next episode of the Revenue Rewired podcast. Say that 10 times fast. Hi, Jay. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
Good, good. All right. Well, today we're talking about AI, which I hope, everyone isn't sick of it yet. In some ways, I think they are because they're hearing the same stuff over and over again without really getting anywhere. But I'm really excited about this. We had our book club meeting about the AI driven leader. We had a presentation on this topic last week. I feel so good about what we're doing with AI and like this new tool. It's kind of like breathed new life into marketing and all kinds of stuff. I even saw an email yesterday about AI driven, what is it when you can't hear? Yeah, hearing aids, hearing aids.
Oh my God.
AI
I know.
assisted hearing aids. And I was like, that is so cool. So today, though, we want to talk about a topic that's come up a lot for us and our clients. Jay, this was probably one of the first questions you asked me when ChatGPT rolled out for public use was how do we show up and how do we optimize for AI
hmm
search engines? And I was like, I don't know. And it's funny because here we are almost 2 years later, still navigating the answer to this question, which, funny enough, there's some answers and we'll share those with you. But there's also still a lot of unknowns, which I think we're just going to keep running into. So, the rules of AI and SEO are changing fast. And I don't necessarily believe and subscribe to the hype that SEO is dead. I think those are clickbaity titles, but we are going to talk about how it impacts AI. And there's AIEO. It's kind of like Ronald McDonald, like so many acronyms for this, but we'll just say for simplicity's sake, AI search engines.
I
And
like
that could be
that.
GEO or AEO, but let's just say AI search engines to be simple. And it really is pretty cool because you are looking into the future. And if your buyer or your customer prospect is opening up ChatGPT, for example, saying, who should I work with? And they're using it as a search response, are you even in the answer set? That's kind of the question we want to answer today. So um, we would love you to think about how you're optimizing for answers. So, Jay, the first part we're going to talk about is the death of traditional SEO. And like, what is
Nice.
that really trying to get at? What does it mean? And what are we really talking about with that?
I think so on, this topic, because I think a lot of people still are not even using, tools like ChatGPT, even without even knowing it, they're probably not realizing they're using, AI though in like Google, with Google's, AI integration. But, I think the part we need to think about, I think to help kind of set the mind around what we're talking about today is really the key difference. And that's where I think it's so interesting. When you watch people that have spent a little bit of time in like tools like ChatGPT, when you watch how they do searching in, AI platforms, versus Google, that's really for me what was the most eye-opening experience where, for many, many years, when you think about like traditional SEO, it was, and it still is to this day, very much around what is the keyword you're focusing on. And obviously, over the years, the role of SEO has changed so much, mainly because, SEO marketers have kind of ruined things for people because of all of the kind of scammy things they were doing, with stuffing keywords and whatnot, and all the, black hat tactics. But, typically to this day, people still will type in like, a two or three phrase, keywords to try to have Google give you the answers you want. Now you just got to search around the page between paid and organic and figuring out what is you want to look at. But I think with ChatGPT, the people are that I'm noticing are searching more in a conversational way and giving more context. And I think that then allows the machine to really understand what it is you're trying to do with the goal of giving you that single answer. And so I think in the world that we're living in now, where there's just so much noise out there, this is here to stay. And I think it's just going to get better and better. And so I think from the, back to the death of traditional SEO, I think it's just going to evolve. Google obviously is going to need to really figure out here how they're going to best leverage this because, they're a publicly traded company and they're all about getting the clicks so they can make the money. And if AI is just going to give the answer to people right there, even on Google, you're going to see a lot less clicks happening to various different websites, which obviously is going to hurt Google's, monetization of that. And even worse, people are finding that tools like ChatGPT are just becoming so much more amazing at that. I had a chat with my family about it this weekend where in the last 30 days, I've completely flip-flopped my own search behavior where I would visit Google probably, I don't know, 5 to 15 times a day searching for things. I probably search for Google maybe once or twice a week now. I'm just loving the experience of using tools like ChatGPT because I'm just so busy. I want someone to understand what I'm trying to uncover and then give me the actual answer. So that's the part where I think from the death comment you made, I just think that we need businesses to be thinking about this differently, where this is a new platform they need to be leveraging. And if you go on there and you start playing with it and finding that you're not showing up, but your competitors are, that's where I think the conversation needs to go about how can you make sure you're being found where your ideal client is going to find someone like you.
Yeah, and what's funny about your comment with searching, I actually do like using the AI generated search summaries in Google. What's interesting is the triangulation of information, where SEO kind of feels like a very two-dimensional. It's not. I'm not offending anyone SEO, but compared to the way search results are showing up now, it feels almost two-dimensional compared to this three-dimensional level, which, AI is really focusing on clarity, credibility, and content. And so I think what's happening there is more information is needed to gain more trust digitally. So Google obviously still has domain authority. It's very focused on making sure it's not serving up garbage responses. But where AI is sort of taking the next level is digital authority. So it's triangulating all this information. And I think, Google's definitely going to keep up. I have no doubts that their, AI generated search summaries are going to be the next thing. And unfortunately, what that also means is not necessarily the death of traditional SEO in so many words, but also those metrics aren't going to matter. Like it's going to create web traffic tanking. We've already seen it.
Yep.
There are a bunch of articles. I don't know if there was one that came out this morning on LinkedIn, and it was just a horrible metric for traffic and clicks because they don't have to click anymore. It's a zero click game. And if you're not showing up, then it's kind of saying you're not credible, you're not creating content, and you're just basically not as trustworthy as your competitors maybe.
I love that. And I think that was a really good point you made. And I think we should maybe before we move on to the next kind of part of this show, I think we should maybe kind of take that one level deeper because when you were just talking, it helped me kind of think about it differently. Where, again, back to your death of traditional SEO, I think to put into perspective from the, traditional SEO side, the search engine, especially Google, they relied heavily on, seeing people searching on certain keywords, clicking into it and seeing what the experience was and the affinity you had between the keyword and the site you visited. And again, there, Google relied heavily on all those user experiences, and the authority of those sites to help decide who kind of deserves to win and getting the results. Where I think on the AI side, it doesn't today at least, ChatGPT doesn't have that option because they don't really have an integration like Google has where they're able to analyze the traffic on the actual third party or external websites. But they obviously need to have some kind of algorithm in place to decide who they want to display in the results. And so I think a good analogy might be kind of considering it from the SEO side is like if you're driving a car and Google is basically helping you on the map side, AI is really kind of that, advanced GPS system. And you're driving and you're seeing like a billboard, that's the SEO side where you basically could, pay to have, that placement. But with AI, it doesn't really have that ability. And so basically, if it hasn't seen you getting, the wins and the reviews, it's not going to know to recommend you. And so that's where I think where the opportunity is going to change, I think heavily, is is trying to reverse engineer how the AI systems are deciding who and what they want to recommend to people based upon their prompt. And if you can get ahead of it now, I think there's gonna be a lot less catch up having to worry about it because again, I've seen so many businesses that, 2, 3 years ago, they're trying to compete with companies that have been around for 15 plus years. It just got a lot more challenging on the SEO side. But I think with AI, I think everyone has a significant opportunity here because it is still quite new. And I think it's super exciting to figure out how you can show up in for results.
Yeah, and when a client recently asked me, like, oh, we had someone reach out on a forum and they mentioned that their AI agent recommended their company. He was like, how is that happening? I said, well, frankly, all the work you've been doing this last year is paying off. Where there are certain things that are just like, if you consider old SEO as just a billboard, but new AI optimization is like getting a referral from a trusted friend.
Yep.
There's just more information feeding the system. But, let's talk about next how basically let's kind of like unpack what does AEO and GEO mean? Because we're hearing these words bit out left and right, they're they're a little different. And I think understanding the difference between them or like what is, and then what's feeding them is probably the next best place to start. So we'll kick it off.
Yeah, I think so. And again, I want to try to avoid using a lot of keywords and marketing speak, but I think, these are words that are definitely getting thrown around and probably going to become even more and more prevalent. But like on the AEO side, that's answer engine optimization. So think about that of like again, whatever AI tool you're using. Like, yeah, my favorite is ChatGPT. I know others on my team like Perplexity and whatnot. Even Google's system. So the AEO side is really about basically creating content that isn't being reused and referenced by the AI tools, and not just the humans. But on the GEO side, that's generative engine optimization. And that's really where kind of the future is headed. And the concept around that is this is where I think back to your traditional SEO is ending. GEO is basically the new thing. And so the idea around that is how do you take your brand and then you're training the AI systems to basically say that your content and your messaging is what they should recommend, like a trusted friend, to people that are searching online or searching at AI. And so that's the part that I think, is going to be where I think a lot of, marketing firms like us are going to be investing energy because, I've been testing this now for, my gosh, probably well over a year aggressively trying to figure out, how they're deciding who to show up. And you can use it for a lot of different tools like competitive research and other things like that. But it is really interesting trying to figure out how to get found through GEO.
Yeah, what's interesting is my take, and there are quite a few people talking about this. So, it's not some, it kind of is some like little secret sauce, recipe hanging out there, but it isn't hard to understand what is the majority of the information being populated and fulfilled in these systems. And SEO is still an excellent backbone to have in order to show up because you've had to develop a lot of authority and you have to answer the right questions. And Google always rewarded and learned to like the old stuffing and black hat tactics. Google kind of got smart to that and stopped promoting businesses that were like exploiting those tactics and leaned into making sure that the content was relevant. It was like like a teacher, like this is a great work product. I'm going to give you an A. The next level, though, is can I answer the follow-up questions? And that I think is where the reward happens, where individuals need to have the answers already there from a prospect, like a website that they're searching or a business they're investigating without having to guess or dive deeper or reach out to them. I think we need to give away more in advance to help those systems understand even more, which feels counterintuitive. You want to get the curiosity going to get people to reach out to you to get to the next level. But I don't think that's going to continue working very well. I think you're going to have to keep giving maybe a couple of ingredients away from your secret sauce in order to help the system understand your business better because that's how it's being trained. It doesn't know what it doesn't know. And a perfect example of this was I was planning a trip and I didn't understand why it kept having me travel on the wrong day. And I finally realized it didn't know that I was an American citizen celebrating Labor Day. I had made the assumption it knew at least that much about me. And so I think we make assumptions. The new way of doing content is don't make those assumptions, create quality content that builds off of the stuff you've already built, but maybe goes a little bit deeper to help the language models understand your business on another level.
I mean, I love that, Sarah. Yeah, that was a very good perspective on it. I think to add to it, and then I obviously want to move into maybe some recommendation of what people can be doing about this moving forward. But um, I had a chat also similarly with a client, both their head of marketing and also their head of sales. And this conversation came up because they were like, I'm reading all this stuff about AEO and GEO, and I just not understanding, which obviously is what encouraged us to want to have, a show about it. But what the analogy I kind of, or what how I explained it to them seemed to resonate. And I want to maybe just share that to piggyback off what you just talked about is on like the AEO side for the marketing people listening to this. Think about that from the answer engine part of it, as far as like you're creating content that you need to build to teach the machine. And that's really kind of more of the instructional thing. Back in like the Q&A days or Quora or even like Reddit, but it's simply here's the question in the prompt, and the AEO side is you building really smart content to teach the machines. On the GEO side, that's really the optimization part, because now you also need to do is you need to train the models to basically, make you their favorite and your point of view, which obviously ties into the term thought leadership, which we've been talking about for many, many years around content marketing. But when I shared an example with the head of sales about on the GEO side, it's almost like sales training for AEs or AI. And so, right now, he has to individually train, even with all of the SOPs he has in place, every person he brings on. But from the AI side and leveraging automation, you can scale this to a much higher level. And so on the GEO side, you're basically taking all that great content and thought leadership and you're training the bots on how to represent you at a higher level of scale. And when I kind of talked about it from that perspective of incentivizing him to think about if you can do a really good job of making the AI systems understand the value that you bring and why you're better than everyone else, it's very likely then going to give you a much better chance of you getting you showing up in the actual results. And so, to wrap that part up before we maybe move on to some recommendations, is like the SEO is like going to a networking conference handing out business cards, where AEO is like getting featured in a really impressive magazine like Forbes or whatever. And then the GEO side is now you're writing that kind of playbook, but it has your brand all over it. And then it's going to be then shared with everyone else out there that wants to benefit from those situations. So that's kind of, I think, a fun way. Not that I want to your point 5 minutes ago, I don't think SEO is dead. It just is evolving. And so I know that a lot of people like tease me if I give out a business card to someone because that's old school and I'm a boomer or whatever. But there is a time and place for all of this stuff. And to your point, Google is just a massive company, and they're going to find some really creative ways around this and just enhance or change the model of how SEO is going to be thought about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get into some tips for our listeners. We'd love to call this like the B2B AI visibility playbook.
That's good.
Um, and so Jay, I think you and I each have a couple of tips for them. I'll start with one which I think kind of ties into what I mentioned prior, which is it's all about trust. It can't be just you saying how awesome you are or talking about yourself. It really is getting diversity in your approach and your exposure. So it still has to be quality. And in this case, I'd say like SEO best practices still apply. It still needs
Hmm.
to be quality. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be on brand, and so getting cited by others with authority is a really still an excellent way to be found. What about you?
Yeah, and I think so with that, the part to add one comment there is back to that answering questions. So, I think you kind of shared two tips there, in my opinion. One was about, getting that citation part, for others talking about you to give you authority. But then obviously tied to that is you're obviously sharing all of that amazing content, focus on answering questions and not just basically, being too salesy. So I want to make sure that was clear. Those are, I guess, two different points I thought were really valuable that you shared. And then I think another one that I wanted to share is the AI systems themselves, similar to probably, how Google has built out their, server farms and whatnot. They're all just crawling and absorbing so much content. And so, when you look at the various different, AI LLMs, the platforms, they're all pulling data from various different sources, similar to how Google would. And so, my advice there would be is that to leverage what you talked about with producing really high quality, answer focused content, and then getting others to talk about it. I think from there, then is I would then kind of upcycle it and syndicate it everywhere you can because different AI platforms are using tools like LinkedIn and some leverage YouTube and some even go to like Quora and Reddit and all those various different places. And so back to the SEO mindset, I think your point before was really smart is the ways you properly did SEO is somewhat similar to how you would optimize for AI. And so what you want to do is think up first about your audience and where are the places that they're going to. And obviously you want to make sure that you're showing up well there in a very authoritative, values forward, not overly salesy approach. But then there is a very good chance that you might not even be aware of other places where your audience might be going. And that's where I think it might be really smart to think about diversifying, the locations where you're engaging and promoting your content. Because I think a couple of these different really well received sites like LinkedIn versus YouTube are preferred differently by different AI systems. So I wanted to recommend that being another tactic to think about.
Yeah, and ChatGPT has a deal with Reddit, right? So,
Yep.
you know, and and to your point about the quantity of information, we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating as much as possible is if you've ever had a document full of information and it was just one big giant paragraph, your brain has a really hard time understanding what's important. And we've evolved to creating hyperlinks to other important articles inside of it and then creating better structure with H1s and just formatting is one quick way where AI has only milliseconds. Maybe it's microseconds. I don't know. I'm not a math person, but it doesn't have very much time to look at the information. And the easier the formatting is, the better it will understand what it is you're trying to say that's important. So,
I
our
love
four
that.
tips are really like structure. Structure is still important. Build an appropriate foundation for your information, create quality information, share that quality information, and share it everywhere. And I don't know, Jay, like to me, that it sounds so simple to do, but I think the next step is really thinking beyond just answering their question. That's the end of it, which is really where my brain is seeing this. It's how do I not only get them to my roadside truck stop? How do I get
Hmm.
them to stay at the hotel? How do I get them to enjoy the other things that my little town has to offer, for example? And I think that's it is what is the next level? I'm not just answering your question and leaving you on, without anything else. I'm now thinking about what you would want to do next. And I think that's where we're at is like the future is here to question what is next.
Yeah, and I think, to add one final comment before we wrap this up, because I think if one of our, current or prospective clients, or someone listening to the show, isn't really doing a lot of content marketing, they might feel a bit behind and not even know where to start. And so I think to maybe make it one step easier to your point before about where to start, I think two very simple other things to add on to think about because again, it all ties in obviously heavily to your content and thought leadership is one, your sales team is likely the best solution to go to is what questions and objections and concerns they're having. You capture all that data like you just talked about a little bit and building out, a list of all the things that, our ideal client wants and understands. And then two, feeding that into an AI tool like ChatGPT and saying, here are the things that, our ideal client is wanting to better understand or concerned about or has pain points or motivations or whatever it might be. In addition to this, what else would you recommend? And I think from there then is you can really build out a very smart list of topics that could be of value and then basically from there you can add your point of view and content around it but that's kind of I think with these four tips plus those I guess two sub tips I think those are probably really good places to start on building out your what do you call it AI visibility playbook.
Yeah.
I love that,
Yeah,
that's
and
great.
and we're here to help like doing AI audits. We do them for our clients. So if you would like to know, I honestly don't know where to start, reach out to us. You can email us podcast@stringcaninteractive.com or hit up our website and fill out a form and we'll reach out to you. But Jay, this was an awesome episode and I'm looking forward to talking about this more and seeing how it evolves because I think we're going to listen back on this episode in like 6 months and go, well, gosh, it's changed. That's crazy.
Watch 1 month probably would be like oh my goodness a whole new
It's like a
thing.
time capsule.
Yep, I love it. Thanks
All
everyone,
right. Well,
appreciate it.
thank you all. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Revenue Rewired podcast. Send us your questions to podcast@stringcaninteractive.com and follow us for more insights to drive your business forward.